I was in the middle of reheating leftovers when the call came in. The screen lit up with Megan's name, and for a second, I actually felt relieved. She was supposed to be at some networking event downtown, the kind she always complained about but never missed. I figured maybe she needed me to come pick her up or just wanted to vent about how soul-sucking corporate life could be. But when I answered, everything about her tone was off. Too cheerful. Too light. Like she was holding back a secret and couldn't wait to spill it. "Hey," she said, almost sing-song. "Hey yourself," I replied, balancing my phone between my ear and shoulder while opening the fridge. "Everything okay? You heading home soon?" "About that," she trailed off, and I could hear the faint hum of music in the background, distant laughter, the clinking of glasses. She wasn't in a quiet corner of some hotel conference room. She was somewhere else, somewhere louder, more alive. I shut the fridge door, my gut already knotting itself up, and tried to keep my voice casual. "What's going on? You're gonna lose your mind when I tell you this," she giggled, and I felt my skin prickle. "I'm not coming home tonight." Silence stretched between us. I waited for the punchline, for her to say something that made sense. But it didn't come. "Why?" I asked, my voice low and even, though every nerve in my body was suddenly on high alert. Her next words hit me like a punch to the ribs. "I ran into Nathan Scott." I actually laughed, this dry, humorless sound. Nathan Scott. The Nathan Scott. The actor she used to have a full-blown obsession with back when we were still too broke to afford anything beyond Netflix marathons. She had posters of him. Posters, for God's sake. She used to joke that if she ever got the chance to meet him, all bets were off. "No, seriously, Megan. Why aren't you coming home?" "I'm serious," she practically squealed. "He was at the bar after the event. We started talking and, well, one thing led to another and he invited me to his place." Her voice was all excitement. No guilt. Like she was telling me she'd won concert tickets. Not that she was ditching her husband and kids to spend the night with a guy who made a career out of being everyone's fantasy. Are you kidding me right now?" My voice cracked, and I hated it. Hated that I sounded so weak, so blindsided. "Come on, don't be mad," she said, almost scolding me. "It's just one night. It's Nathan freaking Scott. You understand, right?" I felt my legs buckle, and I sat down hard on the kitchen chair. No, I don't understand. Are you actually telling me you're spending the night with him? Like you're just what? Leaving me here with the kids to go?" My voice broke again, and I couldn't finish the sentence. "Oh my God, don't be so dramatic," she sighed, exasperated. Like I was the one being unreasonable. "It's not a big deal. I'll be home tomorrow." And just like that, she hung up. No explanation, no apology, just a click and she was gone. I sat there, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. My pulse pounded in my ears, my chest tightening with something I couldn't even name yet. Rage, disbelief, fear. I wasn't even sure. All I knew was that something inside me had snapped. I wasn't a jealous guy. I wasn't the type to jump to conclusions. But this wasn't nothing. I didn't even realize I was moving until I found myself in our bedroom, pulling an overnight bag from the top shelf of the closet. My mind raced as I packed. Just the essentials. Clothes for me. Clothes for the kids. Toothbrushes. My laptop. I wasn't thinking straight, but I knew one thing for certain. When Megan walked through that door tomorrow, she wasn't going to find us here. I worked quickly, silently, my hands shaking as I zipped up the bags. My son's favorite stuffed dinosaur. My daughter's worn-out blanket. Little pieces of their world that I couldn't bear to leave behind. Every minute felt like a countdown, like a fuse burning toward an explosion I couldn't stop. By the time I finished, the kids were asleep, their soft breathing the only sound in the house. I stood there in the doorway of their room, watching them, my chest aching. How do you explain something like this to two little kids? How do you tell them that the person they love most in the world decided that a night with a stranger was more important than coming home to them? I clenched my jaw and turned away, pulling out my phone and making the call I never thought I'd have to make. My sister picked up on the third ring, groggy and confused. "James? It's 2 a.m. What's going on?" "I need a place to stay," I whispered, my voice barely holding together. "Just for a while." She didn't ask questions. She just said, "Come over." I left a note on the kitchen counter, my hand trembling as I scribbled the words. "The kids are safe. Don't call me." I didn't sign it. I didn't need to. When I finally pulled out of the driveway, the weight of what had just happened crushed down on me all at once. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly I thought it might snap. My heart raced, my mind spiraling through every possible scenario. Was she with him right now, laughing at his jokes, letting him touch her the way only I was supposed to? But one thought cut through all the noise, clear and sharp as glass. This wasn't the beginning of the end. This was the end. And Megan had no idea what was coming next. The drive to my sister's house felt endless. Even though it was barely 30 minutes away, my mind kept replaying Megan's voice, that casual, careless tone, over and over like a broken record. "It's just one night. Don't be mad." As if it was the most normal thing in the world to leave your husband and kids behind to chase after some washed-up celebrity. By the time I pulled into my sister's driveway, my head was pounding. The kids were still asleep in the back seat, their faces peaceful, completely unaware that their whole world had just been flipped upside down. I hated Megan for a lot of things in that moment, but mostly for this, the confusion and hurt she was about to put them through. My sister, Emily, opened the door before I even had a chance to knock. She was in her pajamas, hair messy, eyes full of worry. "James, what the hell is going on?" I shook my head, my throat too tight to speak, and started unloading the bags. She helped me get the kids settled into the guest room without asking any more questions. But once we were alone in the living room, she wasn't letting me off the hook that easily. "Okay," she said, crossing her arms. "Spill." I sat down on the couch, rubbing my hands over my face, trying to find the right words. But there weren't any, so I just told her the truth. "Megan called me tonight. She's not coming home. She said she ran into Nathan Scott and decided to spend the night with him." Emily blinked at me, once, twice, and then her face twisted into something between disbelief and pure fury. "You're kidding." "I wish," I muttered. "Wait, wait, wait." She held up a hand, pacing the room like she needed to physically walk through the insanity of the situation. "So she just called you up and said, 'Hey babe, I'm gonna spend the night with some B-list actor. Don't wait up?'" "That's exactly what she said." "And you think she's, actually with him?" I gave her a look that said obviously, and she let out a sharp breath. "What a—" She stopped herself, shaking her head. "James, I'm so sorry. I didn't need pity. I needed answers. I needed to know how long Megan had been this person I no longer recognized. Because the woman I married, she would never do this. She wouldn't throw away her family for a one-night thrill." But then I thought about all the little things I had ignored over the past few months. The late nights at work, the sudden obsession with going out more, the way she guarded her phone like it was Fort Knox. I thought about the arguments we'd had recently, the way she'd snap at me for the smallest things, like I was an annoyance she couldn't wait to get rid of. Maybe this wasn't the first time. Maybe Nathan Scott was just the first time she didn't bother to lie about it. I sat there in silence, the weight of that realization pressing down on me. Emily sat next to me, her voice softer now. "What are you gonna do?" "I don't know," I admitted. "But I'm not going back there. Not until I figure this out." The next day, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I imagined Megan in some penthouse suite, tangled up in bed with him, laughing at my expense. By morning, my exhaustion had turned into something sharper. Anger, determination. I called my boss, told him I needed a few days off for a family emergency. And then I started digging. Her social media was spotless, of course. Megan always knew how to keep up appearances. But I wasn't looking for what she wanted me to see. I was looking for what she didn't. It started with her email. She thought I didn't know the password. But she wasn't exactly creative. The moment I logged in, my stomach twisted. There were messages, so many messages. From names I didn't recognize. Flirty emails, suggestive comments, and one thread that caught my eye immediately. A name that wasn't Nathan Scott. Tyler. They had been talking for months. Meeting up. She told him things she never told me. And the worst part? She wasn't even trying to hide it. Not really. My hands shook as I scrolled through the messages, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't a one-time thing. Megan had been playing me for God knows how long. I almost threw my phone across the room, but then something else caught my eye. An address. Tyler's address. And a time. She had plans to meet him. Tonight. I don't know what came over me, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to sit back and let her get away with this. Not anymore. I grabbed my keys, and without telling Emily where I was going, I drove straight there. Every mile that passed, my heart pounded harder. What was I going to do when I saw her? What was I going to say? By the time I pulled up outside the address, some sleek apartment complex downtown, I could barely breathe. I waited, watched the entrance, and then, like a punch to the gut, I saw her, Megan, my wife, laughing as she walked up to the building, her hand brushing through her hair, looking every bit like a woman meeting her lover. Not a mother of two, not a wife. I didn't think. I just acted. I jumped out of the car and called out her name, loud enough to make her freeze in her tracks. She spun around, eyes wide with shock and something else. Fear. She didn't expect me to be here. James? Her voice was high, forced. What are you? Funny? I cut her off, my voice shaking with anger. I was about to ask you the same thing. Megan's smile faltered, her body stiffening as she turned fully to face me. For a split second, her mask slipped, and I saw the panic flash in her eyes. But then, just as quickly, she recovered, folding her arms across her chest like I was the one who had some explaining to do. James, what the hell are you doing here? She hissed, her voice sharp but low, like she didn't want anyone around to hear this confrontation she never expected. I took a step closer, my fists clenched so tight my nails dug into my palms. I could ask you the same thing, Megan, but I'm guessing you're not here to sell Girl Scout cookies. Her eyes narrowed. Are you seriously following me now? Jesus, James, this is pathetic. I actually laughed. This cold, bitter sound that didn't feel like it came from me. Following you? No, Megan. I didn't have to follow you. You're not nearly as clever as you think you are. Your boyfriend Tyler? Not great at keeping secrets. Her face froze, all color draining from it in an instant. She blinked, caught completely off guard. And that's when I knew. She never thought I'd find out. She thought she had me so thoroughly wrapped around her finger that I'd never question her. Never dig deeper. She thought I was too trusting, too blind. But not anymore. You went through my stuff? She snapped, trying to regain the upper hand. But I wasn't playing her game. I shouldn't have had to. I shot back. But you didn't exactly leave me much choice when you called me from a bar to say you were spending the night with a celebrity. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and for a moment, I thought she was going to deny everything. But instead, she rolled her eyes, brushing me off like I was a minor inconvenience. Okay, so what? Yeah, I've been seeing Tyler. And maybe there were others too. Are you happy now? Is that what you wanted to hear? Her words hit me like a slap across the face, each syllable slicing through whatever fragile hope I still had left that maybe, just maybe, this was all some horrible misunderstanding. But it wasn't. It was real. Brutally, undeniably real. Why? I demanded, my voice cracking despite my best efforts to stay calm. Why would you do this to us? To me? To the kids? Her expression hardened. Oh, don't you dare bring the kids into this. They have nothing to do with it. Nothing to do with it? I nearly shouted, my disbelief boiling over. You abandoned them last night to hook up with some washed-up actor. They asked for you, Megan. They wanted their mom. And you weren't there because you were too busy chasing some fantasy. Oh, please, she scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. You act like I'm the worst person in the world for wanting more out of life than being stuck in the same boring routine with you. My breath caught in my throat. Boring. That word echoed in my head, louder than anything else she had said. Is that what this is about? I whispered, my voice trembling with a mix of rage and heartbreak. You're bored? So you just, what? Throw away our marriage? Our family? She shrugged, and I swear to God, the casualness of that gesture made me want to scream. I didn't sign up to be someone's wife first and a person second. You got comfortable, James. Predictable. And maybe I wanted to feel wanted again. Desired. You think I didn't want you? I shot back, my voice cracking under the weight of my disbelief. I loved you, Megan. I gave you everything I had. And this is what I get in return. Her eyes flicked away from mine, just for a moment, but it was long enough. Long enough to tell me that no matter what I said, no matter how much I hurt, she wasn't going to apologize. She wasn't even going to pretend to be sorry. You want me to say I'm sorry? She asked, a sarcastic edge to her voice. Fine. I'm sorry you found out. Happy? I stepped back like her words had physically pushed me. I stared at her, the woman I had built a life with, the mother of my children, and realized that I didn't recognize her at all. This wasn't Megan. Or maybe it was, and I had just never seen it before. I hope it was worth it, I said quietly. Every ounce of love I once felt for her draining away, leaving only an aching hollowness behind. Because when you come home, we won't be there. That made her flinch. Not the cheating, not the lies, but the idea of losing control. Wait, what do you mean? I didn't answer. I turned on my heel and walked away, ignoring her shouting my name behind me. Every step I took felt heavier than the last, but I didn't stop. Couldn't. Not anymore. I didn't go straight back to my sister's house. Couldn't. My hands were shaking too much to drive. My mind was spinning so fast I could barely think straight. So I parked in some random lot downtown, killed the engine, and just sat there, staring at the steering wheel like it had answers. Megan's words kept looping in my head, each one cutting deeper than the last. You got comfortable. Maybe I wanted to feel wanted again. And the worst one, the one that had nearly broken me, right there on that sidewalk. I'm sorry you found out. Not sorry for what she did. Just sorry that I knew. How the hell had we gotten here? I leaned back against the seat, closing my eyes, trying to remember the last time things between us felt right. The last time she looked at me like I was more than just furniture in her life. Placeholder. I thought about our wedding day, the way she couldn't stop smiling, how she held my hand so tightly during our vows, like she never wanted to let go. I thought about the night we brought our son home from the hospital, how she cried because she was scared she'd never be enough for him, and I held her, promising that we'd figure it out together. But somewhere along the way, those moments got buried under school runs, mortgage payments, work stress, and life. And while I was busy trying to keep everything from falling apart, she was out there, looking for something more, something better. I felt a sharp sting in my palm and realized I had been clenching my fist so tightly that my nails had dug into the skin. I forced myself to take a deep breath, but it didn't help. Nothing would. Not tonight. And then my phone buzzed. For a second, my heart leapt into my throat. Maybe it was Megan, realizing she'd made a mistake, begging me to come back, to talk, to fix this. Maybe she'd finally understand what she was throwing away. But it wasn't Megan. It was a text from an unknown number. Just 2 words. Check Instagram. I stared at the screen, my pulse pounding in my ears. My first thought was that it was some spam message. But something about it felt intentional, like a nudge, a push. I clicked the link they sent, and it opened directly to a profile I didn't recognize. A Tyler Knox official. The account was private, but the profile picture was enough to make my stomach drop. It was him, Tyler, the guy Megan had been sneaking around with. And just below his name, the bio read, "No regrets, no apologies. Just living life." But it wasn't the bio that made my blood run cold. It was the newest post. A blurry, dimly lit photo of a woman sitting across from him at what looked like a fancy restaurant. Her face wasn't fully visible, but I didn't need to see it clearly. I'd know that silhouette anywhere. The curve of her neck. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear. Megan. The caption? "Some nights are unforgettable." The post had been up for less than an hour, but the comments were already rolling in. Laughing emojis, fire emojis, people asking, "Who's the lucky lady?" Tyler hadn't answered, of course, but he didn't need to. I felt sick, like I might actually throw up right there in my car. She wasn't even trying to hide it anymore. Before I could stop myself, I clicked on the comments and typed out the only thing my rage-addled brain could think of. Her husband and kids would disagree, and then I hit send. It took less than a minute for the fallout to start. Notifications flooded my phone. Likes, replies, people demanding to know who I was, what I meant, and then a direct message from Tyler himself. "Who the hell do you think you are?" I stared at his message for a long moment, My jaw clenched so tightly it ached. And then I typed back, "I'm the guy whose wife you've been screwing. But don't worry. She'll be your problem soon enough." I didn't wait for a response. I blocked him, deleted the app, and then I sat there, breathing hard, knowing that I had just lit a match and thrown it straight into a pile of gasoline. Good. By the time I got back to Emily's place, the kids were still asleep, but Emily was waiting for me, arms crossed, eyes full of questions. "Where the hell did you go?" she demanded in a harsh whisper. "You've been gone for hours." I sighed, rubbing the back of my neck. "I found Megan." Her eyes widened. And I told her that when she comes home, we won't be there." Emily blinked, processing what I'd just said. "So, this is really happening?" "Yeah," I whispered. "It's really happening." She sat down next to me on the couch, her voice quieter now. "What's your next move?" I shook my head. "I don't know, but I'm not letting her drag me, or the kids, through this any longer." Emily reached over, squeezing my hand tightly. "Whatever you need, I'm here." I nodded, grateful, but my mind was already somewhere else. Because deep down, I knew that this wasn't over. Megan wasn't the type to let go without a fight. And neither was I. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. Not the Megan I married, but the Megan I confronted outside Tyler's apartment. The one who looked at me like I was an inconvenience. Like I was beneath her now. That look carved itself into my brain, and no matter how many times I turned over in bed, I couldn't shake it. When morning finally crept in through the blinds, I was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, staring at my phone. No messages from Megan. No missed calls. Nothing. She knew I was gone. She saw the note. And still silence. I didn't know if that made me furious or relieved. Emily walked into the room with 2 mugs of coffee, handing me one before sitting down across from me. "Any word from her?" I shook my head. "Nope. She's probably still with him," she muttered, her disgust barely hidden. "Yeah," I said softly, gripping the coffee cup tighter than necessary. "Probably." She studied me for a moment, then leaned forward. "So what now? You can't hide out here forever." I knew she was right, but the thought of going back to that house, our house, knowing Megan had been using it as her base camp for every lie she ever told me made my skin crawl. I needed a plan, something solid, something that didn't leave me grasping at straws while Megan continued to live her life like nothing happened. I took a slow sip of coffee, letting the warmth ground me. "I need to talk to a lawyer." Emily's eyebrows shot up. "A lawyer? Already? What choice do I have?" I asked, my voice cracking under the weight of it all. "She's not going to stop, and I'm not going to let her drag the kids through this." She nodded, understanding. "I'll watch the kids." I forced a tight smile. "Thanks, Em." Within an hour, I was sitting in a small, dimly lit office across from a divorce attorney named Aaron Cole. He was younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe, but there was a sharpness in his eyes that told me he didn't miss much. "So," Aaron said, leaning back in his chair after I explained everything, "your wife called you to say she was spending the night with Nathan Scott, but you later found out she's been having an affair with someone named Tyler Knox." I nodded. "And she's unaware that you've spoken to an attorney?" "Yeah," I replied. "I don't even know if she realizes how serious this is." Aaron steepled his fingers, considering me carefully. "Well, James, let me be blunt with you. Infidelity complicates things, but it also gives you leverage, especially when kids are involved." "Leverage," I repeated, leaning forward. He nodded. "If you can prove the affair, and from what you've told me, there's more than enough evidence, you'll have a much stronger case for custody." Custody. That word twisted my gut. I never imagined I'd be sitting in a lawyer's office talking about custody of my children. But here I was, because of her. "Okay," I said, taking a shaky breath. "What do I need to do?" Aaron opened a folder and started explaining the process. The paperwork, the evidence, the negotiations that would inevitably turn ugly. But then he paused, giving me a pointed look. "James, you need to prepare yourself," he said, his voice serious. "Megan doesn't sound like someone who's going to back down easily. If she feels cornered, she'll fight hard." I already knew that. Megan always hated losing more than anything else. This wasn't going to be civil. It was going to be a war. When I left the office, my head was buzzing with legal jargon, deadlines, and a gnawing sense of dread. But underneath all that, there was something else too. A spark of resolve. I wasn't going to let Megan walk all over me anymore. She made her choice. Now I was making mine. I was halfway to my car when my phone rang. Megan. I froze, my finger hovering over the screen. My heart pounded as I debated answering. But curiosity won out. I swiped to accept the call. James, she said, her voice calm. Too calm. We need to talk. I laughed bitterly. Now you want to talk? Don't start, she snapped. Where are the kids? Safe, I replied curtly. With me. Bring them home, she demanded, her voice sharpening. Not happening, I shot back. Not until we figure this out. She sighed, this exaggerated, put-upon sound like I was being the unreasonable one. God, you're such a drama queen. Drama queen, I repeated, incredulous. You called me to say you were spending the night with another man, Megan, and that's just the tip of the iceberg, isn't it? There was a beat of silence, and then she chuckled softly. So you've been doing some digging? Yeah, I said coldly, and I'm just getting started. Her tone changed instantly, turning icy. You don't want to do this, James. Actually, I replied, feeling the anger burn brighter. I really do, she huffed, clearly annoyed. Look, we can make this easy or we can make it messy. Your choice. I clenched my jaw. Funny. I was about to say the same thing to you. Before she could respond, I hung up. She wanted a fight? Fine. She was about to get one, that the silence after I hung up on Megan was deafening. But my pulse was still pounding so hard I could barely hear myself think. She had sounded too composed, too confident. Like she still believed she was holding all the cards. But she didn't know me, not anymore. She didn't know what I was willing to do now. By the time I got back to Emily's house, my phone was buzzing nonstop. Texts from Megan. Half threats, half manipulative pleas. James, don't do this. Let's talk. You're being ridiculous. Bring the kids home. You have no idea who you're messing with. If you take this any further, you'll regret it. And then the last one that nearly made me crush my phone in my hand. The kids belong with me. You know that, right? The audacity. The sheer nerve of her after everything she'd done. My hands were trembling as I stared at that last text. I felt this deep, simmering rage settle into my chest. She wasn't going to take them from me. Over my dead body. Emily walked in, holding my daughter on her hip, and my son trailing behind her with a juice box. She took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. What happened? She asked softly, setting the baby down. Megan, I muttered. She's trying to get inside my head. Emily sat down next to me, glancing at the texts over my shoulder. She let out a low whistle. She's really doubling down, huh? Yeah, I muttered. She always does when she's cornered. Emily leaned in, her voice low. So what's your next move? I rubbed my temples, exhausted. Aaron, the lawyer, he said we need more evidence. Something solid. Something that proves she's been unfaithful and unfit. Emily nodded thoughtfully. Then you need to get it. Yeah, I whispered. But how? Emily was quiet for a moment. Then her eyes lit up with something that almost looked like mischief. You know, Megan's never been as careful as she thinks she is. I frowned. What do you mean? She's arrogant, Emily said with a shrug. She thinks no one's smarter than her. She probably has everything you need sitting right under her nose. My mind started racing. Megan was cocky, yes, but also careless. She relied too much on people not paying attention. And if there was one thing I was paying attention to now, it was her. A plan started forming in my head. Risky? Yes, but necessary. That night, once the kids were asleep, I grabbed my laptop and started searching. Megan had her own laptop at home. Password protected, of course, but I knew her patterns. I just needed a chance to get to it. Emily raised an eyebrow when she saw me plotting on my laptop. What exactly are you doing? I'm going home, I said, closing the screen. Her eyes widened. Are you insane? Maybe, I admitted. But Megan's not expecting me to show up tonight. And if there's anything incriminating on her laptop, or anywhere else in that house, I'm going to find it. Emily sighed, clearly wanting to argue. But she knew better. Be careful, she warned. And don't let her get inside your head. Too late for that, I muttered as I grabbed my keys. The drive back to our house, her house now in my mind, felt surreal. I parked down the street, cutting the engine and sitting in the darkness for a moment. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Good. She was still out. Probably with him. I slipped in through the side door with the spare key I never thought I'd use like this. The house was quiet. Too quiet. It felt hollow without the kids' laughter or the sound of toys being scattered across the floor. My heart ached thinking about how this place used to feel like home. Now it felt like enemy territory. I moved quickly, heading straight for our bedroom. Megan's laptop was on the nightstand. I opened it, fingers hovering over the keyboard. I tried the first password that came to mind. Nothing. The second. Still locked out. I thought for a moment, then typed in the name of the hotel where she'd stayed with Nathan Scott. It was stupid. Sentimental. Exactly Megan's style. The screen blinked, then unlocked. I let out a shaky breath. Gotcha, I whispered. But the moment I started going through her files, I realized I had stumbled onto something far worse than I ever imagined. Buried in a hidden folder, marked with a single asterisk, were dozens of emails. Not just between her and Tyler, but between Megan and someone else. A name I never expected to see. My best friend, Eric. I stared at the screen, my vision blurring with rage. Eric, who had been my friend since college. Eric, who had been my best man at our wedding. Eric, who had come over for dinner with his fiancée just last month. The emails painted a horrifying picture. Late-night meetups, whispered conversations behind my back, inside jokes that suddenly made sense in the worst way possible. And one email that made me slam the laptop shut so hard it nearly cracked. James will never find out. He trusts me too much. I sat there, my whole body trembling. She didn't just betray me with random guys. She betrayed me with him, my best friend. And now I wasn't just fighting for my kids. I was fighting for every shred of dignity Megan had stolen from me. This wasn't just war anymore. This was personal. My pulse thundered in my ears as I sat in the dim bedroom, Megan's laptop still warm on my lap. My hands clenched into fists, shaking so hard I thought I might snap. Eric. Of all people, Eric. My best friend. The guy who knew every detail of my life. My go-to for advice when Megan and I hit rough patches. The man who toasted our marriage with a grin and a promise to always have my back. And he'd been sleeping with her behind mine. The weight of it pressed down on my chest like a brick. I wanted to scream, punch a hole in the wall, break something, anything, but I couldn't afford to lose control now. Not when I had this. Proof. Cold, undeniable proof. Megan couldn't gaslight me out of this one. She couldn't twist my words. Couldn't laugh off the truth like she had so many times before. I clicked through more emails, my stomach churning with each one. There were conversations that went back over a year. A year of lies. A year of my so-called best friend sneaking around with my wife while I was at work, while I was taking care of our kids, while I was planning our future. And the worst part? The messages weren't just about their hookups. They were about me. He's so clueless. Honestly, sometimes I don't know how he doesn't see it. James is too nice. That's the problem. He's boring. He'll never be enough for you, Meg. I can't wait until you finally leave him. We can stop pretending. I gritted my teeth so hard it hurt. Every word was another knife in my back. Eric hadn't just betrayed me. He had mocked me, dismissed me, treated me like I was too stupid to notice. And Megan had fed into it, encouraging him, laughing along. I couldn't sit here any longer. I needed to get out before I did something I'd regret. I copied everything onto a flash drive I found in the desk drawer, shoved it into my pocket, and closed the laptop as quietly as I could. My mind raced with what to do next. I had proof now, but proof wasn't enough. Not yet. As I turned to leave, headlights flashed through the window. My breath caught in my throat. Megan's car. Panic surged through me. She wasn't supposed to be home yet. I grabbed my keys, moving fast but silent, heading for the back door. But just as I reached for the handle, I heard her voice from the front hallway. James? I froze. She must have seen my car parked down the street. James, I know you're here, she called, her tone sharp and annoyed. You're not exactly subtle. I closed my eyes, cursing under my breath. There was no way out now. Slowly, I turned around and walked into the living room, where she stood with her arms crossed, an eyebrow raised. "What the hell are you doing here?" she demanded. I kept my expression calm, though my blood boiled under the surface. "I came to get some things." She narrowed her eyes. "You mean you came to snoop?" I tilted my head, giving her a cold smile. "And what if I did?" Her mouth twisted into a smirk. "Find anything interesting?" My heart hammered in my chest, but I kept my face neutral. "Wouldn't you like to know?" She stepped closer, her eyes scanning me like she was trying to gauge how much I knew. "You're playing a dangerous game, James." I chuckled bitterly. "Funny. I was about to say the same to you." Her eyes flickered, but she quickly masked it with mock amusement. "You think you have something on me? Go ahead. Use it. Let's see how far you get." She was bluffing. She had no idea what I'd found. And that's when it hit me. Megan wasn't worried because she thought she still had control. She thought I was still the same naive husband who would cave the moment she pushed back. But she was wrong. "I'm done playing games, Megan," I said quietly, stepping past her toward the door. "Enjoy the rest of your night. It might be one of the last peaceful ones you have." Her smile faltered, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. But I didn't wait to see her reaction. I left, closing the door behind me with a finality that sent a clear message. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. When I got back to Emily's, she was waiting for me in the living room, her face pale with worry. "Did you get what you needed?" I nodded, pulling out the flash drive. More than I ever wanted to know. Her eyes widened. "What did you find?" I hesitated for a moment, the words bitter on my tongue. "Eric." Her mouth fell open. "Eric? You're Eric?" "Yeah," I whispered. "They've been at it for over a year." She covered her mouth with her hand, shaking her head in disbelief. "James, I'm so sorry." "Don't be," I said, my voice steady but cold. "They're both going to regret this." The next morning, I was sitting in Aaron's office again, the flash drive on the desk between us. He plugged it in, his eyes scanning the files as I sat in silence, my fists clenched tightly in my lap. When he finally looked up, there was a gleam in his eye. "This changes everything." I exhaled slowly, my resolve hardening. "Good, because I'm not holding back anymore." Aaron leaned forward, his voice firm. "Neither am I." This wasn't going to be easy. It wasn't going to be quick. But I was ready. Megan thought she could burn our life down and walk away unscathed. But now she was about to see what it felt like to lose everything. The weight of everything settled on my chest as I left Aaron's office, but underneath the crushing betrayal, there was a flicker of something I hadn't felt in days: control. For once, I wasn't stumbling through the dark, blindsided by Megan's lies. I wasn't the clueless husband trying to make sense of a nightmare. I had the truth now, all of it. And Megan? She had no idea what was coming. The drive back to Emily's was a blur, my mind churning through every possible scenario. Megan was smart, but her arrogance had left cracks wide enough for me to slip through. She thought she'd played me. She thought I was weak. But she was about to learn exactly how wrong she was. As soon as I walked through the front door, Emily was there, arms crossed, waiting. "So, what's the plan?" I held up my phone. "We're going to burn her world down, one piece at a time." Emily's eyes widened. "James, I was thinking, I don't know, mediation? Maybe even counseling? But burn her world down." She didn't hesitate to burn mine. I shot back, voice hard. "And now she's going to feel what it's like to lose." Emily stared at me for a moment, then sighed. "Okay, I'm in." I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. My mind kept replaying every memory I had of Eric. Backyard barbecues, road trips, the night he stayed up with me after my dad died, drinking cheap whiskey and promising he'd always have my back. Lies. Every moment was a lie. The next morning, I made the first move. It was time Eric found out what betrayal felt like. I scrolled through my phone, found his fiancée's number, Kara, and hesitated. She didn't deserve this. But then I remembered the emails, the mocking, the sheer cruelty of it all. No, she deserved to know the truth. I sent her a simple text. I'm sorry to do this, but you need to see this. Eric isn't who you think he is. Attached were screenshots of his emails with Megan. Less than a minute later, my phone buzzed. Kara. I answered, expecting tears, but what I got was a voice so cold it sent chills down my spine. James, tell me everything. For the next 20 minutes, I laid it all out. The affair, the lies, the betrayal. Kara listened in silence, but I could hear her breathing getting heavier, more erratic. When I finished, she whispered, he proposed to me 3 weeks ago. 3 weeks ago. My stomach twisted. I'm sorry. Don't be, she snapped. I'm not the one who's going to be sorry. The line went dead. I almost felt bad for Eric. Almost. But there wasn't time to dwell on that. I had bigger problems, Megan. When my phone buzzed again, I expected it to be Kara. Or maybe Eric, finally realizing his world was collapsing around him. But it was Megan. We need to talk. Now. I stared at the message, heart pounding. She knew. Somehow she knew. I texted back. Where? Her reply was almost instant. Home. 30 minutes. I exhaled slowly. Fine. She wanted a face-to-face? She'd get one. When I pulled up to the house, her car was already in the driveway. I stepped out, every muscle tense, and walked inside. She was waiting in the living room, arms crossed, eyes blazing. What the hell did you do? She snapped the moment I walked in. I raised an eyebrow, feigning innocence. Me? What makes you think I did anything? Don't play dumb, James, she hissed. Kara called me. She knows. Eric knows. He just called me screaming. So tell me, what did you do? I let a slow, cold smile spread across my face. I did what you never expected me to do, Megan. I fought back. She laughed bitterly, pacing like a caged animal. Oh, congratulations. You exposed an affair. What do you want? A medal. I want custody of the kids, I said bluntly. And I'm going to get it. Her head snapped toward me, eyes narrowing. You think you're going to take my kids from me? There are kids, I corrected. And yeah, I do. She stepped closer, her voice low and venomous. You have no idea what you're starting, James. I will destroy you. I leaned in, voice calm but icy. You already did, Megan. Now it's my turn. Her face twisted in fury, but I didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. I turned and walked out, leaving her standing there, seething. This wasn't over. Not even close. But the war had officially begun. I sat in my car outside the house, my knuckles white against the steering wheel. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. Megan's voice still echoed in my head. I will destroy you. Maybe once those words would have scared me. Not anymore. She had already destroyed the life I thought we had. Now it was my turn. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself, and dialed Aaron's number. It was early, but I didn't care. James? Aaron answered, groggy but alert. What's going on? I need to move forward, I said firmly. Custody, divorce, all of it. Today. There was a pause, and then Aaron replied, all right, let's get to work. By noon, we were sitting in his office again. Papers spread out in front of me. Custody filings. Divorce petitions. It felt surreal, signing my name on documents that would officially end nearly a decade of marriage. But every stroke of the pen felt like a step out of the wreckage Megan had left me in. She's going to fight this, Aaron warned. Hard. Let her, I muttered. She wants a war? She's got one. As I left Aaron's office, my phone buzzed. Another text from Megan. You think you've won because you ran to a lawyer? Cute. Watch me take everything from you. I clenched my jaw so hard it hurt. Megan always played dirty, and I knew this was only the beginning. But then, something unexpected happened. A second text. Not from Megan. From Eric. We need to talk. Please. I stared at the screen, my anger boiling over. Talk? Now he wanted to talk? I typed back one word. No. But before I could toss my phone aside, it buzzed again. This time a call. Eric's name flashing across the screen. I shouldn't have answered. I knew that. But some twisted part of me needed to hear what he had to say. What do you want? I snapped as I answered. James, listen, Eric started, but I cut him off. No, you listen. You slept with my wife. You lied to my face for over a year. And now you want to talk? Save it. I didn't know she was still seeing other people, Eric blurted out, desperation in his voice. I froze. What? I thought it was just us, he said quietly. But after Kara found out, I confronted Megan. She laughed at me, James, said I was just another piece in her game. I swallowed hard, trying to process his words. You're telling me you didn't know about the others? There were others? Eric whispered, and I could almost hear the color drain from his face. Yeah, I spat. Nathan Scott ring a bell? Eric swore under his breath. Jesus Christ. Yeah, I said bitterly. Welcome to my world. There was a long silence, and then Eric said something that made my blood run cold. She said something else, he muttered. Something about how she never thought you'd actually leave because of the kids. My breath hitched. What are you talking about? She said as long as she had the kids, she had you. That you'd never walk away from them. That no matter what she did, you'd stay. I felt like the air had been sucked out of my lungs. Megan wasn't just cheating. She was strategizing. She was using our kids as pawns in a game I didn't even know we were playing. I'm going to take them from her, I whispered, more to myself than to Eric. James, if there's anything I can do, Eric started, but I hung up before he could finish. I didn't want his help. I didn't want his guilt. I wanted my kids safe from Megan's twisted manipulation. That night, I couldn't sit still. My mind raced through every possibility, every move Megan might make. She was already 2 steps ahead. I needed to catch up, fast. And then it hit me. Megan's biggest strength was her secrets, her lies. She thrived on keeping people in the dark. What if I took that away from her? I grabbed my laptop and started typing. My hands shook as I wrote, but the words poured out of me like a flood I couldn't stop. By the time I was done, I had a lengthy post typed up. Every detail of Megan's betrayal. The affair with Eric. The night she called me to say she was staying with Nathan Scott. The emails I found. Everything. I hovered over the post button. Exposing her like this, it felt risky. Dangerous even. But then I thought about my kids. About the text she sent me. Watch me take everything from you. No. I clicked post. The fallout was immediate. Within minutes, my phone was blowing up. Friends, family, people I hadn't talked to in years. Everyone had seen it. And Megan? She called me 3 times in a row. I didn't answer. But then a text came through. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. I smiled bitterly as I typed back. No, Megan. I finally stopped making mistakes. Let the games begin. My phone didn't stop buzzing for hours after I hit post. I knew what I was doing the moment my finger hovered over that button. I was detonating a bomb. And once it exploded, there was no going back. Every messy detail of Megan's betrayal was out there now. No more secrets. No more hidden affairs. She thrived in the shadows, but I had just dragged her kicking and screaming into the light. Friends were texting me nonstop. Some in shock. Some in disbelief. And a bitter few, with messages that cut deeper than I expected. I always thought Megan was too good for you. Guess she thought so too. Maybe if you weren't so focused on being a perfect dad, she wouldn't have wandered. It was like salt on an open wound, but I didn't respond. Let them talk. Let them speculate. Megan had spent a year making me feel like the fool. Now everyone knew who the real villain was. But none of that compared to Megan's reaction. Her first text after my post had been a warning. A threat. But when I didn't respond, her tone changed. James, take it down. Please. You're ruining everything. Think about the kids. I'm begging you. Please. We can fix this. Begging. Megan never begged. Ever. I almost felt a flicker of sympathy. But then I remembered the emails. The laughter. The sheer disrespect. And that sympathy vanished. I didn't respond. Let her stew in the mess she created. The next morning, I was woken up by a pounding on the door. Emily peeked out of her room, whispering, "Who the hell is that?" I already knew. I opened the door to find Megan standing there, her eyes wild, hair disheveled, and face flushed with fury. "You have 2 seconds to take that post down," she hissed. stepping into the house like she owned it. I didn't move, just leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. "Good morning to you too, Megan." Her hands clenched into fists at her sides. "I'm not playing, James. You want to ruin my reputation? Fine. But you are not dragging me through the mud in front of our kids. You dragged yourself through the mud." I shot back. "I just handed everyone a flashlight." She let out a sharp, bitter laugh. "You think this is going to help you? You think a public meltdown is going to win you custody? I think the emails I found, the nights you disappeared, and the people you paraded through our life might," I replied coldly. "And trust me, Megan, I've got more than enough proof." Her eyes narrowed. "You're trying to paint me as a bad mother." "No," I said, leaning in closer. "You did that all by yourself." Her face twisted into something between rage and desperation. "You can't take them from me. Watch me." And then, just when I thought she couldn't shock me anymore, she whispered, "If you take me to court, James, I'll make sure they know everything. Every mistake you've ever made. Every time you lost your temper. Every time you weren't perfect. I'll destroy you." I felt a slow, cold smile spread across my face. "Then you better start digging, Megan. Because I promise you, whatever dirt you find on me, it won't come close to what I have on you." She stared at me, breathing hard, before finally whispering, "You're going to regret this." I stepped aside, motioning to the door. "Funny. I was about to say the same to you." She stormed out, slamming the door behind her so hard the windows shook. Emily appeared from around the corner, wide-eyed. "Well, that went well." I exhaled slowly, running a hand through my hair. "She's not going down without a fight." Emily raised an eyebrow. "Neither are you." I nodded, already thinking about my next move. Megan thought she could scare me into submission, but she had no idea how far I was willing to go to protect my kids. This wasn't just a custody battle anymore. It was war, and I wasn't backing down. The moment Megan slammed the door behind her, I knew the clock was ticking. She wasn't the kind of person who let things simmer. No, Megan struck fast and hard, and I had just declared open war. She'd retaliate soon. I could feel it in my bones. Emily gave me a wary glance from across the room. "So what now?" I stared at the closed door, my mind already racing. "Now, we get ahead of her." She frowned. "Ahead of her? James, you just nuked your marriage online. What's left?" "Her next move," I muttered. "She threatened me, She's gonna try and flip the script, paint me as unstable or unfit. She'll do whatever it takes to keep the kids." Emily sat down on the couch, rubbing her temples. "So what? We just wait for her to blow up your life even more?" I shook my head. "No. We make sure she doesn't get the chance." Before she could question me, I pulled out my phone and called Aaron. He answered on the first ring. "James," he greeted, voice tense. "Saw your post. Figured you did," I replied. "Listen, Megan's going to come after me hard. What can we do?" Aaron sighed. "We file for an emergency custody hearing. If we can prove Megan's behavior is detrimental to the kids, we might have a shot at temporary custody until the divorce is finalized." "Then let's do it," I said firmly. "James, slow down," Aaron warned. "It's not that simple. We need witnesses. Evidence that shows Megan's behavior has impacted the children negatively. Have you noticed any changes in them recently?" I thought about the nights Megan would come home late, the kids already asleep, asking me the next morning why mommy wasn't there to tuck them in. I thought about the day my son, Liam, asked me, "Daddy, do you think mommy likes work more than us?" His little face crumpled with confusion. The ache in my chest was instant and brutal. "Yes," I whispered. "I have." "Good," Aaron said. "We'll need details, specific incidents. The more, the better. I'll get you everything you need," I promised. When I hung up, Emily was already on her laptop. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Looking through Megan's social media," she replied. "If there's anything that makes her look bad, anything that contradicts her whole perfect mom act, I'll find it." I didn't have the energy to argue. Emily was sharp. If anyone could find dirt, it was her. Hours passed as we combed through everything. Old texts, emails, social media posts, anything that might paint a clearer picture of Megan's double life. And then Emily gasped. James, she whispered, turning her laptop to face me. I leaned in, my heart dropping as I read the message she had pulled up. It was a private message Megan had sent to one of her friends 2 months ago. Honestly, I love my kids, but sometimes I wish I could just start over. No responsibilities. Just me living my best life. Is that so bad? The friend had responded with, LOL, totally get it, but you'd miss them if you left. And Megan's reply? Maybe, but not as much as you'd think. My blood ran cold. That's it, I whispered. That's the kind of thing Erin needs. Emily nodded, already taking screenshots. We're going to bury her with this. But just as we started to feel like we might have the upper hand, my phone buzzed. Another text from Megan. Check your email. Emily and I exchanged a glance. Dread settled in my stomach like a rock as I opened my email. And there it was. An email from Megan's lawyer. Mr. Turner, please be advised that my client, Megan Turner, has filed for full custody of your children on the grounds of emotional instability and parental neglect. Court date pending. My head snapped up, eyes wide. She filed first. Emily's mouth fell open. What? How? She was already planning this. I interrupted, voice hollow. Before I even posted anything. She knew. The room felt like it was closing in on me. Megan wasn't just reacting to my post. She had anticipated it. She had been one step ahead the whole time. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. James? What are you going to do? I looked down at the email again. My jaw clenched so tightly it hurt. I'm going to stop her. The weight of Megan's email crushed me, but only for a moment. The shock wore off fast, replaced by a searing, relentless determination. She had filed first. She thought she was 2 steps ahead. But if she wanted to play dirty, I was ready to drag her through the mud she created. Emily sat in stunned silence, her eyes flicking from my face to the email glowing on my screen. James, this is bad. I know, I muttered, already dialing Erin's number. He answered quickly. James, I saw the filing, he said without me needing to explain. She's accusing you of emotional instability. Claims your behavior after finding out about the affairs has made you unfit to care for the kids. She's lying, I snapped. Of course she is, Erin replied. But she's smart. She's using your post against you. She's going to say you publicly humiliated her and exposed your personal life in a way that could harm the children emotionally. I felt a wave of nausea rise in my throat. Megan didn't care about the kids. She cared about winning. What do we do? I asked through gritted teeth. We fight back, Erin said calmly. We counter her claim with the evidence we have, her infidelity, her neglect, the nights she left the kids wondering where she was. And James, we use that message Emily found. I glanced at Emily, who nodded firmly. I'll send it to you right now. Good, Erin said. And James, you need to keep your cool. The last thing we need is Megan baiting you into something reckless. She's going to push every button you have. I knew he was right. Megan knew me better than anyone. She'd manipulate me, provoke me, try to make me lose my temper so she could use it against me. But I wasn't going to let her win. I'll see you in court, I said quietly before hanging up. Emily let out a shaky breath. This is going to get ugly, isn't it? I nodded. Yeah, but I'm not backing down. The next week was a blur of legal documents, meetings with Erin, and sleepless nights. Every day, I braced for Megan's next move. And it came just days before our first court date. A knock on Emily's door. When I opened it, Megan stood there, her face calm but her eyes blazing. We need to talk. I stepped outside, closing the door behind me. What do you want? She leaned in, voice low and sharp. You really want to drag this out in court? Fine. But if you do, I'll make sure our kids hate you for it. My blood turned to ice. What did you just say? She smiled coldly. You think I won't? I'll tell them you left because you didn't love them anymore. That you're the reason their family fell apart. I'll make sure every time they look at you, they see a villain. My hands clenched into fists at my sides, but I forced myself to stay calm. You're a monster. No, she whispered, stepping even closer, her breath hot against my face. I'm a mother protecting what's mine. Protecting. I laughed bitterly. You don't protect them. You abandoned them for every cheap thrill you could find. Her smile faltered. I struck a nerve. Stay out of my way, James, she hissed, or I'll burn every bridge you have left. I stared at her, my voice low and steady. You already burned them all, Megan. There's nothing left to lose. Her eyes flickered with uncertainty for the first time. She turned sharply and walked away without another word. But I wasn't shaken. I was ready. When the court date arrived, Megan sauntered into the courtroom with her lawyer, all polished confidence. But as the proceedings began, her smirk started to falter. Aaron presented every piece of evidence we had. The affairs, the neglect, and finally the message Megan had sent to her friend, the one where she admitted she didn't love our kids as much as she should. Megan's face turned pale, and when the judge awarded me temporary custody pending further investigation, Megan's mask finally cracked. Her eyes burned with fury, but for the first time, there was something else behind them. Fear. She thought she could control everything. She thought I'd crumble. But as I walked out of that courtroom, my kids' hands in mine, I knew one thing for certain. I was never going to let Megan win.